The Teacher in a Global Age. Darwin's Finches and the Challenge of Being an Educator in Japan. Darwin, 聞いたことありますか？ Finch は鳥。Okay, so Charles Darwin, a little bit of Vika history. Charles Darwin sailed around the world for 5 years. He observed nature and he collected many samples, plants and animals and many things. Okay, over here, this is South America, and these are the Galapagos Islands. Okay, these are Darwin's finches from the Galapagos Islands. Darwin noticed that the finches on different islands looked similar to each other, but that their beaks were different. But Darwin suspected the finches had a common ancestor and became different species because they were on separate islands. That was the idea. Darwin suspected the birds' beaks evolved, changed in response to different types of food on different islands. This biological differentiation over time became known, theory of evolution through natural selection.
進化論のことですよね。環境に適応して、その環境にとって優位なその資質っていうのが次の世代にバトンタッチされるのが次の世代にバトンタッチされるということで、もうまさしくそこに書いてある自然淘汰による進化の理論っていうダーウィンの進化論。
Okay. Today, we know that genetic mutation is normal. Many mutations are destructive, but some mutations result in survival advantage of offspring in the environment where they live. だからなんかミューテーションあるからだんだんなんか違うものになることができます。For over 100,000 years, humans migrated to different places across the planet. Through generations of genetic mutation and physical separation, humans have differentiated into many types. In the situation of islands, Galapagos Islands, in the situation of islands, specialization is more pronounced because islands are physical barriers to intermixing. In biology, that's normal, a normal situation. You get more specialization on an island. Okay, beyond biology. The culture and language of Japan has evolved uniquely over thousands of years. This is both a beautiful thing and a barrier. So 今からだんだん教育の話になります。なんか今まで質問ありますか？
思ってたよりも早く過ぎてるみたいで、なんかここまでのところでなんか質問ありますかね。他にも日本語で言ってましたけど、どうですかね。
作るのはめっちゃ時間かけたけど。
根本的なこと聞いていいですか？
はい。
今日は一体何を学ぶのか教えてほしいです。
What are we teaching? What's the point?
テーマっていうんですか？
Okay. やっぱり、global education 日本にするのなぜ難しい？やっぱりポイントはthat's the point I'm going to make in the end.
グローバル教育そうですね。日本におけるグローバル教育がやっぱり独特な しさがあるっていうところを話をしてくださる、今導入の話をしてくださるので、すいません、ちょっと私の
いいえ、よかったです。ありがとうございます。
はい、説明をしてたと思いますけど。
And if I can maybe you can help me with translation. So, a lot of my work is trying to help Osaka, trying to help Japan with change the education, 21st century learning, like that.
私が今やっている仕事っていうのは、大阪とか日本のね、教育を変えていくっていうことのお手伝いをしています。
So we have policies from NEXT, and we have the efforts from the Board of Education, and schools are trying and everything, but it's hard and it's slow. And this is a little bit of an explanation about why I think it's so hard and so slow.
やっぱり次の教育、私たちがやっている21世紀型っていうのかな、次の教育に進めていきたいんだけれども、なかなか難しいし、とても進み具合がゆっくりだと。で、そのことに関して、私が、今見えているものをお話ししていきたいと、そのように思っています。
So I think the people in here, you are working professionals, teachers and Board of Education like that, and you are responsible for changing education in Japan, and it's really hard, right? I know it's hard for you.
ここにいらっしゃる方々っていうのは本当にもう教育の専門家、皆さん現職でいらっしゃるので、日本の教育を変えていくっていうことに関してやはり責任のあるお立場にいらっしゃるとそのように思っていますので、思っています。
And you'll see in one of the slides coming that I think Japan is behind about 15 or 20 years of other leading nations for education reform. Japan is ahead of some other countries, but for the leading nations who are trying to reform education, I would say Japan is about 15 or 20 years behind. And this presentation is kind of an explanation about why I think that's the case.
15 and 20.
Between 15 and 20 years, I would say.
やはり他の世界の主要国っていうのは教育改革を進めていますけれども、日本は、私から見ると15年から20年間遅れているように思います。ので、そう、do you understand what I said?
Yes.
Okay.
And you'll see a connection to Darwin's Finches and the biology model and education, international education.
ですので、このダーウィンの先ほどからお話ししていただいている例を使って、そのことを具体的に、お伝えすることができたらなと思っております。
Thank you. Your question was a very good question.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
他いかがですか？とてもいい質問をいただきましたけど、他いかがですか？
はい。
さ
これも基本的な。
どうぞ。
名前。
発音。
はい。What's your name?
John
Johnson.
ボディン先生。
ボディン先生。日本のその教育によっしゃ頑張ろうってなぜそんな情熱を向けてくださるのかっていう。
Why do you commit Japanese education? Why do you commit? You make a commitment.
Yeah.
About your.
That happened over time. It wasn't right from the beginning automatically, but in the beginning I was not a teacher. I was just some kanji. And then little by little, dan I became level up teacher and some kanji, kocho, and then it's a great question. So I think Japan is an amazing country. But I also think in some ways Japan lost some of its confidence internationally. But every time I'm around the world and I come back to Japan, I always think, さすが日本もちゃんとできてるな、こことか、いろいろ。So, and I always believe that if Japan decides to do something, it can be amazing. It can be a world leader. I don't know if Japan has the jishin yet to do that in education. ごめん、たくさん話して。
最初日本に来た時にはね、なんかすごくその大きな絶対やったよみたいな感じではなかった。英会話学校の教師から始めたんだけれども、時が経つにつれて、副校長になったりとかそのやっぱりその教育の中にどんどん出ていくっていうことになったと。で、日本って本当にすごい国だと思っているんだけれども、ただなんかちょっと自信を失っているように見えると。で、ただ日本っていうのは何かを決めたらね、決めることさえしたらすごくリーダーシップを発揮することができる国だというふうに思うけれども、その今教育においてもなんかちょっと自信を失っているように見える。Is that right?
Yes. So I have one more その質問で I have one more 話。That's with my wife. I made an 英会話教室。Is where I live. I made it to serve the community because we heard so many times people complaining the price of eikaiwa kyosutu is so high, and children they were going and going and going, and their English was not getting better. So we made an eikaiwa kyosutu where the learning is fun. We wanted children to enjoy learning. They make progress in English, they level up. And the price is super cheap. And we do that because we want to help the families in our community they cannot afford more expensive eikaiwa kyosutu. And we get very, very good results. We have so many students. But it always made me sad to hear that money was a barrier. We can't send our children because it's too expensive. And you have testing in Japan. So if you have money, you have a better chance to go to Juku, to get a better test result, things like that. So I didn't like that, so I tried to help with that. So you know there's some problems in Japan. And if you have a chance to try to help, and you can, it feels good. So over time, I become addicted to helping. That's why my commitment for this. And I think that Japan can do an amazing job. We're just starting the engine now, right? And I know everybody's working so hard. And it's hard to change. I have a slide about that. So, mostly, my motivation comes from listening to parents about the difficulties they have. Like, oh, my son, they want to go to high school, like Kinjo, no, they want to go to the high school in the neighborhood, but they don't have the score, so they need to go to private school. It's going to be very expensive. It's so sad. So, anything I can do to help. Because I know these people, they're in my neighborhood, they're my friends.
ちょっとまとめてお伝えしますけれども、やっぱり自分がその日本に続けて教育に関わり続けているっていうそのモチベーションの一つは、その教育の費用っていうのかな。やっぱり最初関わった子どもたち向けの英会話学校も非常に英会話学校っていうのは高い料金を払わないといけないっていう、そういう世の中だったけれども、So Your wife is also a teacher.
She's the owner-operator.
Owner, I see. 奥様の、英会話学校はもう料金を安くしてですごく楽しいところにしたらどんどん子どもたちも集まるようになったんだけれどもやっぱり息子さんの、進学とかっていう問題にこう関わってきた時に私学は料金が高いしっていうようなそういう問題があったのでなんか自分としてはそこに関わっていくことができないかなっていうふうに思いました。
I think so. Also, because I'm a foreigner, because I'm an outsider, it's easier for me to do something different. I don't feel the pressure as much.
But you don't feel what?
Pressure as much.
Pressure.
Social pressure. I don't feel the same social pressure.
やっぱり私は日本の言うたら外国人っていうのかなので日本人に比べたらなんか社会的なプレッシャーっていうのを感じずに日本の教育を変えるっていうことに、いろいろ発信ができるそういう立場であると思っております。
So up to now we were talking about differentiation, specialization. And you have specialization in biology, but also language, also culture. Right? 文化と言葉も生物だけじゃなくて。Many people around the world are interested in Japan's unique culture. It is an important part of Japan's identity and economy. So on this point, it is good that Japan is slow to change its traditions. It is something that I respect. I have been to other countries where they change their culture really quickly, and I feel it's sad. So I love that Japan holds its culture. I think that's a fantastic thing. Okay? Okay, on the other hand, being resistant to change can make it difficult to adapt when it is necessary to adapt. For example, in response to evolving teaching standards and new technologies. Yes? As a somewhat isolated island, Japan has developed a unique language that is mostly only spoken here, and the people who live here mostly only speak that language, Japanese. This is a barrier to the widespread exchange of information and ideas by working professionals with other countries. Some people speak English, but not a lot.
壁みたいなものですけどね。飲み込めない。細くなっている。
Okay, the education system in Japan is large and complex, like a massive ship. It is not easy to quickly change the direction. Everyone's like, let's change. Then, well, そんなに早くできない。There's all of the systems, all of the policies, all of the procedures. It's not easy to change. In my opinion, Japan is about 15 to 20 years behind other leading nations for implementing widespread educational improvements in response to a changing world. About this, I mean using student-centered teaching strategies and using ICT. I'm not surprised to see this time lag. Okay?
一つ前のスライドの日本は教育システム大きくて複雑です。でも日本は小さいです。
そう。場所は小さい。Canada なんか we have 30 million people you have 125 million people. 人口大きいけど多い。Like Osaka, she 2 million people. Osaka, Fu, 8 million people. Yeah, there's so many people, and it's big. It's big. Big education system. All of the boards of education, all of the schools, all of the boards of education. And every school is kind of independent. That makes it really hard.
その人口が多いだけではなくて、なんか一つ一つの学校がそれぞれその独立しているような、なんかそういう印象を持っておられるようですね。
例えば誰か偉い人変わってでも学校こちょこちょこちょこ変わるかもしれない全然変わりたくないそういう感じ自分で決めるんで自分の学校でだから変わるのは時間かかって難しい
独立っていうのは今言われたようなそういう意味合いなんですね。
In Canada, is it easy to change the education system even if there are big countries?
No. I think not only keep your question because I have a slide about time lag. So this one, the last thing here is time lag. じゃあ次のスライド。About reforming curricula to incorporate 21st century standards, the OECD talks about 4 types of time lag. Recognition time lag. The time it takes to see that there is a problem as a country. Oh, there's a problem, we should do something. Number 2, decision-making time lag. How long does it take to make solutions, to make new policies? That's like Mobu Kogakusho thing here up here, right? So how long it takes to see there's a problem, how long it takes to make a solution, some kind, with policies and things like that. Then you have to go to Kyoikenkai and you have to go to the schools for implementation. How much time does it take? Then to see results. How much time does it take? Impact time lag, implementation time lag. So here's 4 different types of time lag, why it takes so long. So about answering your question. So my experience with public education in Japan causes me to believe that there is a disconnection between the policy making at national level and local implementation. So you see there's a problem, you make the policies, that's KUNI, that's the Ministry of Education. But implementation and the impact, this is the Board of Education and especially the schools. And so the Ministry of Education wants to do something. Let's do it. But like I said before, the principals decide, no, do we do it, do we not do it, right? So what was your question again?
In Canada, is it difficult to make a difference, to change the educational system?
Yes, because here we have policies, but human beings, do they always cooperate? So we should make a change or something, but some people decide they don't want to do it. They resist, they push back. So it's not easy like, we should make a change and everybody says, yes, let's do that. That's not the real world, right? The real world is not the way to do it. Or the,
You were talking about the cases in Canada now. No?
I would say anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
荒木さんはカナダの教育システムっていうのは変えることができるんですかっていう質問をされたんですけれども、そのことに関しては4つタイムラグが日本があるっていうことから、この4つのタイムラグのパターンがあると。 そこまでは大丈夫ですよね。で、最後にボトム先生が言われたのは、やっぱり文部科学省がこれしてよね、あれしてよねっていう施策を出すけれども、でもこう実際の世界、実質的に人々がやっぱりそうだよねっていうところにも差があるっていうふうに、そうyou said that there is some lag between the NEXT 文部科学省 and people are at the school.
Yeah, I have read some of the policies of the Ministry of Education, and they're very nice. They're really good. But they don't really match what I see in the schools.
すいません。ですね、文部科学省が出していることっていうのは本当に素晴らしいと思うんですけれども、やっぱりこう自分の学校に引き寄せて考えた時に、これはうまくいくなとか、これはうまくいかないなっていうものがあると。つまり自分の学校に全てが合っているっていうふうには思うのはないんですよね。っていうことです。
他の話、there's ちょっと難しいけど、there's some research called diffusion of innovation. Diffusion of innovation. You have something new, and you want to share something new. That's diffusion of innovation, of change, for anything. And we say there's 5 types of people. There's early adopters. 何でも新しいことを大好き。やる。すぐ。There's early adopters. They love to experiment. They love anything new. Sorry, ごめんなさい. The first group is innovators. The second group is early adopters. Early adopters are, oh, okay, it's a good idea. Well, okay, I will try. なんか新しいからやるじゃなくても、they think about it and they think, well, okay, it sounds good. Let me try. The next group is called early majority. And there's many people, early majority. Early majority watches early adopter. If the early adopter has success, then the early majority will try. Then you have other people that are slower. They call late majority. They really wait. They want to see success. And then the last group is laggards. They don't want to change at all. So diffusion of innovation, there's 5 types of people. Innovator, early adopter, early majority, late majority, and the laggards. And you can see that with any change. And in this case, education reform, you'll see it. Some people want to do it right away. Some people, they don't want to do it at all. That's normal human behavior. That's why it's not easy to change in Canada or Japan or anywhere. You have different, at least 5 different types of people. Yeah. Is it okay?
Still, you think in Japan it is very, very difficult. So, is it as difficult as in Canada, or is it more difficult than in Canada?
I think it's easier in Japan.
Easier here.
But I think you need to get what's called threshold. So you need enough people to say, yes, let's do it. After you have enough, because Japan's strong point is community and trying together more than Canada. You can work together in a good way more than Canadians. Do you understand? Once you really decide to do it, I think you can do a better job than Canada. My opinion. Do you know what I mean?
But
But
they
I
are
still-
very slow starting. So Japanese people are.
Just a moment, please. Just a moment, please. Sorry to interrupt you. 最初のところでおっしゃったのが、やっぱりなんかイノベーション、改革を起こすっていう時には、フュージョンだから混乱、フュージョン、拡散が起こると。で、 なんかあれですよね、音楽のジャンルでもフュージョンってありますよね。ジャズのフュージョン。
Diffusion. D-I.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Diffusion.
Yeah, yeah.
はい、sorry.
It means spreading.
In spreading. 拡散ね。はい。で、その時には5つのタイプがあって、もう本当にイノベーターだからやれやれみたいなタイプと、それからやってみようっていうタイプと、まあまあっていうところと、だんだん落ちていって、まあうんともそんとも動かないみたいな5つのタイプがありますと。それでもって荒木さんはそれでも日本はカナダに比べてそのスピードが遅いんですかっていう質問をされたんですけれども、ポッティング先生はそうですと、日本は遅いんですと。で荒木さんはなんで日本が遅いのかなみたいなふうな質問をさらに投げられたんですけれども、やっぱり日本はその個人で動くっていうよりはコミュニティグループで動こうとする、まあ、そういう何て言ったらいいのかな、国民性っていうのかなっていうところがあるので、すごく一緒に何かをしようという、まあ、私の言葉で言うとマインドセットっていうのかな、そういうのが日本が強いので、カナダの方がより個人的っていうことの裏返しだと、これは私が勝手に言った言葉ですけれども、そういうことなので、カナダの方、日本の方がカナダに比べて遅れているというふうにポッティング先生は言われました。
Yeah. So many of these changes that I'm talking about, in Canada we started 30 years ago. But when Japan finally decides, let's do it, Japan has the ability to change much more quickly than Canada.
多分一つ補足すると、さっきもおっしゃったんだけど、一度決めたら日本人はコミュニティを作るのがうまくても一緒に本当にいい結果を出すし、その能力がある。で、カナダの人はどうかというと、もう30年前からこういうことをしてるんだけど、そんなにそのコミュニティの中でグイグイ進む感じではどうもないみたいです。おそらく私の理解でも、一度決めて動き出す日本人の力ってすごいんだけど、なかなか決められない。他の国は決めて動いていくんだけど、そんなに頑張らないし、そこまで仕事にかけませんので、I think some of European people and some of people are very enthusiastic in changing the education, but of course they also respect their own diet at home and having a good family in Japan. So not so kind of addicted to do only one thing, but Japanese people, once we decide, we do everything in the but
Yes.
maybe take a time.
Exactly right. So I think Japan can change very quickly, and I think Japan has the potential to reach a much higher level than many countries around the world. I feel like Japan could be a leader in the world, top. But I think also we didn't reach that point yet where everybody decides, okay, let's change. The government is trying, some educators are trying, but as a country, I don't think we reached the point yet where everybody says, okay, let's do it.
どうぞ
すいません、飲みに行きます。
じゃあ、
本当に日本ってここまでどんどん来たら、前に進む、もうそれは見えているのに、そこまでまだ行ってない。行ったらきっともう世界のリードをするぐらい力を出すはずなのに、そこはちょっと残念だけれどもっていうところが次のお話かなと思います。
ポッティング先生から見たら、日本っていうのは本当になんか専門家、エキスパーツのなんか集まっている国のように見えるそうです。
I said before, like, I think we didn't reach the point yet where all of education in Japan is going to reform. I don't think we have enough people who care enough to do that yet because everybody's already busy. But that's why I do this. Because before you change, it's the conversation. We need to put out the ideas and keep the conversation going. Like when you're starting a fire, in the beginning, it takes more energy. You need to light the fire and take care of it and take care of it. And then someday the fire will just be going. But we're not there yet. We're still taking care of this baby fire. And that's why I come, is to share the conversation, to share the ideas, and I keep having and make the videos. The starting point is the conversation. So I'm not, like, people have been having the conversation already, I'm just joining the conversation. And that's my job, is to keep the conversation going. ごめんなさい。
ちょっとまとめて言いますけれども、やっぱり何かを始めるときっていうのは、みんなでワイワイガヤガヤとね、会話をして意見を出し合うことが大事ですよね。We talked about the importance of conversation at the very beginning of the project. Is that right?
そうそう。まだ変わってない、まだ変わってない。分かってるけど、今のステージはなんか相談する、話するとか、やっぱりだんだん変わる。We hope. If there's no conversation, nothing happens. Is it okay? Okay, time lags, different types of time lags. You don't have time lag out of recognition, decision making, implementation, that. Okay, many of the things that we are saying now about how to change education to be more relevant, John Dewey, he was saying these things over 100 years ago. These are not new ideas about changing education, many of these ideas. Why suddenly is education finally starting to change around the world? The fire is growing. Okay. This, VUCA. V-U-C-A. V is volatility. U is uncertainty. C is complexity. A is ambiguity. So over the past 20 years, various countries have been proactive in their education systems about preparing for a VUCA world. Now, with 7.7 billion people and growing, the VUCA world is starting. Climate change and competition for resources. As adults, students today will live in a world where VUCA is constantly present. So VUCA is a term that we are likely to hear a lot more of in education from now. Now this is, in education, is kind of a new term, but over time, I think you'll hear this more. Is it okay? So John Dewey emphasized student-centered learning, active learning through experience, and student agency, student power. This type of education results in people who can better handle VUCA. So tightly controlling the education experience in ways that emphasize being the same, uniformity, strictly following top-down directions. A focus on high-stakes testing. This does not result in citizens who are competent at handling VUCA. Do you understand this one? So John Dewey, the style of education for John Dewey is about analyzing, adapting, trying new things. But the system in Japan is more towards being good at a test, especially university tests. These are different skills. But countries, more and more, they're saying, the world is changing, the world is changing. Right? So they're changing their education systems. Keep this up. Okay, there are good things about mastering knowledge, but to pursue the mastery of knowledge without also developing the complex attitudes and skills in the 21st century is not sustainable in the VUCA world. It is like an animal that does not adapt to its changing environment. With each generation, the success of its non-adapted offspring becomes increasingly diminished in the new environment. So, だんだんDarwinのフィンチの話に戻る。Is it okay? Okay, to speak in more practical terms, I believe that the main obstacle, this is my iken, I believe the main obstacle to achieving global standards for teaching and learning in schools in Japan is the tradition of testing required for entrance into Japanese universities. あ、ごめん。すいません。そう長い。そう、もう作ったから読むわ。This university admissions testing system puts pressure on the school system that is a feeder for universities. Schools change their curricula and teaching practice in effort to create students who will be able to get high scores on university admissions tests. これは大事な英語。This is called teaching to the test. It is not a good type of education. In this case, the most important thing is the test. The test is the most important thing, not the student. The weakness of this is that it assumes that the test is good. It assumes the test is relevant, that it's valid in today's world, about what the students should know and be able to do. But every year, those tests become less and less relevant. But the impact on schools is the same. So in terms of education, the tests are good bureaucratically. To run a big system, these tests are bendy. But for education, they're not good. For learning, they're not good. Well, you can learn some things, but only this much, you know? The world has this much. Also, 最後のpointは, it puts students who cannot afford jukus at a disadvantage. This system is very stressful and discouraging for a large proportion of students. You know, some students, they stay home. もう学校行けへん。髪の毛、若いでも髪の毛なんかなくなるとか、ストレスからとか、その感じのシステム。So, is that okay? So what can educators in the school system in Japan do? On the one hand, countries around the world are moving forward with new priorities for education in response to a rapidly changing VUCA world. On the other hand, the school system in Japan remains tied to a system that emphasizes traditional testing for admissions. And this causes schools to remain traditional. These are two opposing realities, my opinion. Okay, there are two main points to my lecture so far. Number one, I understand why Japan has been slow to implement changes. In many ways, this time lag is a natural consequence of being an island that has developed uniquely over thousands of years. Japan is a country that values its traditions. Also, Japanese is a unique language and a dominant language here in Japan, which makes the widespread international sharing of professional ideas and practices with people like me, outsiders, makes it difficult. 英語話せますか? Do you speak English? だから私たちなんか we can't change ideas, right? Just as 普通の先生でなんかちょっと話すことができない。That's the caveat we talk about, right?
だから英語が話せないっていうことが壁になってますよね。
そう英語は一番大事な言葉じゃなくても、でも今は国際の言葉が英語ですから。Okay, number two, there is a significant tension between ongoing traditional domestic priorities for education in Japan, especially as it relates to the effects on schools, high-stakes testing for university admissions, and B, global shifts in education that look forward to a VUCA world. Okay, next. So here we go. Verses, ne? So this is the big ship. Over here, this is the big ship, right? Systems, attitudes, policies, and everything like that. This is all systems, right? Every school has this. And there's many, many thousands. And then there's the ideas about, we need to change, don't we? And it's a big tension between these two. This thing does not want to change. But society and the country wants to change. But the system does not want to change. That's normal. It's not easy. All of the paperwork, it's very expensive to change that. A lot of energy, a lot of money. But people want change. The world is already changing. Okay, the only option really is to adapt to a very different 21st century global environment and to do it before the competitive success of other nations greatly diminishes the welfare of people living in Japan. This comes back to the idea about Darwin's Finches and competition. Because Japan on the inside, you look at Japan on the inside, there's a lot of activity. And many times we don't look at what's happening outside of Japan. But Japan is a country that exists in a world of, I don't know, 150 countries, right? Japan is an island, but it's not alone. It's in a global environment. It's important to also see what's outside. That's the theme of like the global teacher. Is it okay? 今のお話英語で私も忘れたSo like it's easy, I live in Japan, it's easy to only think about Japan, but there's a lot more in the world that affects Japan, outside of Japan, the other countries, what's happening in the other countries, the interconnected economies, all of these things.
私飛んでしまってました。
多分モッティング先生が、このスライドに書いてるように日本以外のアジアとか世界の国がどんどん変わっていく。じゃあ日本はそのままでいいよねってことじゃなくて、むしろ日本の福祉とかこれからの生き方にもう影響を、ネガティブな影響さえ与えるんじゃないかというこの瀬戸際にいるというようなことをおっしゃってるんじゃないかと思います。
Okay. Side note. My lecture today was not about providing advice how to make Japan's education more relevant in a global age. My lecture was about identifying some of the complex problems that face educators in Japan, specifically the tension between a tendency to stay the same and a need to adapt. I believe the way forward is mixing the old with the new. There's some really good things in Japan. We don't need to throw everything away. There's some really good things here. But let's look at what the good things around the world and mix it together. You have something very interesting, I think. I also believe that inspirational leadership is required. Let's try hard. Thank you. Oh,
ありがとうございます。
あと大阪 YMCA の話、ごめん、忘れた最初言うのを忘れた。私、水東国際のスタッフ、全員大阪 YMCA のスタッフ、僕も。大阪 YMCA の文は個々の社会、the social commitment to social service and people's hearts and things like that. That's, I think, a strong point about 大阪 YMCA.
本当に珍しい公設民営っていうシステムなんですけれども、北谷さん間違ってたらいいけどねその土地とかね、箱物っていうのかな、それは大阪市が提供するけれども、その中身に関してはね、全て YMCA が運営しているんです。だから先生たちを採用したりですね、そういうのも全て YMCA がやってらっしゃるんですね。だから校長先生はボッティング先生も YMCA からの、派遣って言えば派遣みたいな形になっているのが、これが公設民営。ただし来年度から先生ところと同じところをくぐり抜けて風に移管されるっていうそういう時期に今なっています。
今日なんか本当にすごく遅れてきたくせに一番容赦でいて、 とってもワクワクする。やっぱこういう学びを僕らが得ないとワクワクは届けれないなって思って、今日この後もずっとお話ししたい。次の授業じゃなくて。
80%理解できます。
そう
って思いました。ありがとうございます。
はい、
すみません、ありがとうございました。
どうもありがとうございましたね。本当にもっとずっと聞いてみたいっていう感想でしたけれども。
Is it okay if I say one last thing?
Sure.
Okay, so my lecture today wasn't to say like, you need to do better, you know, as a foreigner, you need to do better, do this, that's not my point. My point was, I see and understand how difficult it is for you to do the work that you are doing, and how difficult it is to change the education system. And that's all I really wanted to say, is like, to just feel like,
あれしてください、これしてくださいということを皆さんに伝えたかったのではなくて、本当に今の時代ね、教育を推し進めていくっていうことは大変ですよねっていうことを皆さんにお伝えしたかったんです。本当にありがとうございました。